My name is Kate, and I'm 40 years old. I've been married to my husband Mason for 10 years. He's the same age as me and was a colleague at work. We're now at different branches, but we used to be in the same department. My husband is a responsible person who is admired by his subordinates. He's a bit vain and doesn't like to show his weaknesses to others. He was a confident, flashy, and masculine man. His work performance was highly regarded by his superiors, and he was expected to be promoted without any problems. In contrast, I'm a rather low-key and inconspicuous type. I was honestly surprised when he passionately pursued me, as we have opposite personalities. After dating for 2 years, he proposed to me with a large bouquet of roses. I had never been so loved by a man before, so I accepted his proposal immediately. I couldn't wait to start our wonderful life together. However, what awaited us was living with my in-laws. There was no prior discussion, and I wanted to refuse, but my husband was adamant about living with them. "My parents are good people, so everything will be fine," he said, and he passionately explained how much they were looking forward to living with me, so I couldn't refuse. We've been living with his parents in their home for the past 10 years. Life there was unimaginable when we first got married. "Kate, you've forgotten to clean the entrance again." My mother-in-law would start nagging as I finished making breakfast for everyone. This ritual happens every day. "I'm sorry," I would say, but she would reply, "Just apologizing won't do. If you understand, go and do it right away." Even though I had to go to work, I was treated like a servant from morning. For the past 10 years living with my in-laws, I've been forced to wake up at 5 a.m. to cook breakfast and clean. My mother-in-law, a housewife, should have time to do housework herself, but she doesn't. I rush through the morning chores, go to work, come home, and immediately start cooking dinner. By the time I go to bed, I'm so exhausted that I practically pass out. This has been going on for so long that I've become weak and often feel unwell. The cause is probably stress. "Do the cleaning properly. I don't want the neighbors to think we're neglecting it," my mother-in-law would say as she relaxed in the living room eating the breakfast I made. "If you don't finish quickly, you'll be late for work," she would add. Even with this going on, my husband never once stood up for me. My father-in-law would hide behind his newspaper and pretend not to see. Since moving in with my in-laws, I've been subjected to terrible mistreatment. The stress has caused my weight to drop drastically, and I now look unhealthy. My period stopped due to my sudden weight loss, and I couldn't get pregnant. Despite being the cause of this, my mother-in-law continued to blame me. Before getting married, I cared about how I looked and was healthy. Now there's no trace of that. The stress from the mistreatment and the shock of seeing my reflection in the mirror make me feel depressed. I had become completely submissive to my mother-in-law. I lost all motivation and couldn't bring myself to leave the house. It was during that time that I received news of my father's death. He had suddenly passed away in an accident. I hadn't been back to my parents' home in a long time because my mother-in-law and husband would criticize me for wanting to go. I deeply regretted not visiting more when I heard that my father had passed away. My parents' home is about an hour's drive from my in-laws' house, so it's not too far away. I asked them if they would come to my father's funeral. "My father's funeral is happening, so..." "Well, we won't be going. Just have your family there, okay?" The two of them cut me off before I could finish speaking. I never thought that they could be so heartless. I simply replied, "I understand," as I held my trembling shoulders from anger and sadness. Many people attended my father's funeral. He was self-employed and had connections with a lot of people. Everyone who came to the funeral shed tears, showing how much my father was loved. "Kate, It's been a while. You've lost so much weight. What happened? My mother, who I hadn't seen in a long time, was surprised at my gaunt appearance. Oh, it's nothing. You're not sick, are you? I can't bear to lose you too. My mother, who had just lost her husband, thought I had some disease and started crying. I'm not sick, Mom. I'm fine. Don't worry. I calmed my mother down and we took a break in the waiting room. Well, if you're not sick, what is it? I recalled my interactions with my mother-in-law and husband. Even when they learned that my father had passed away, they didn't say a single thing to comfort me. Anger bubbled up inside me, and I decided to tell my mother about my life with my in-laws. Actually, I've been experiencing what you might call bride bullying. I'm just so tired. As I looked down while speaking, she looked at me with a worried expression. I'm glad you're not sick, but I can't relax at all. Is that the reason you haven't been visiting us much? I nodded, and my mother handed me a piece of paper. Read it for yourself and think carefully about what to do next. The paper she gave me was my father's will. My meticulous father had left a will in case something happened. It included information about inheritance as well. I get a $790,000 inheritance. That's what it says. You can decide how to use it. I was shocked by the large amount. At the same time, I had hope that I could end the living situation with my in-laws. With this, I can build a house and leave my in-laws' home right away. My life seemed to be getting better thanks to the inheritance my father left me. I went home to my in-laws' house and did housework as usual. On days when I have plans, the house gets messier than usual. It can't be helped since there's no one to clean. As I silently did housework, I thought about the $790K I had inherited from my father. I had resentment towards my mother-in-law, but I still wanted to be with my husband. I decided to be honest about the large inheritance and proposed that we leave my in-laws' house. I have something to talk about. I began speaking with my husband after my in-laws had gone to bed and we were alone. Yeah, so it's about my dad. It turns out I'm going to inherit his estate. Oh, really? How much? Well, it's $790K. When I told him the amount, my husband looked dumbfounded as if he couldn't believe the figure. What? Are you serious? Yes, $790,000. When he understood what I had said, he was delighted and said, Wow, he left that much for you? That's so generous. So, about what to do with the money? Since he was in a good mood, I decided to get to the main point. But before I could speak, he said something outrageous. We need to transfer that money to my mom's bank account right away. I didn't understand what he was saying. It was so absurd that I thought he was joking. Wait, why? I inherited it, so that's not right. As I laughed and spoke, he slammed his hand on the table. What kind of nonsense are you talking about? A wife's money belongs to her mother-in-law. He probably didn't even realize he was saying something ridiculous. Looking into his serious eyes, I felt frightened. I'm sorry. I don't quite understand what you're saying. All I wanted was to talk about building a house for the two of us. But he wouldn't let me and tried to make my inheritance into his mother's property. That night, I was so shocked that I couldn't sleep. The next morning, as I was preparing breakfast, my husband and mother-in-law approached me with angry expressions. So Kate, I heard that you inherited $790,000 but said you wouldn't give it to me. What are you thinking? She had already heard about the inheritance from my husband. But I'm the one who inherited it. Stop arguing and transfer it to my mom's account right now. A wife's money is the family's money, right? The two of them seemed determined to get their hands on the inheritance by force. No matter how much I resisted, I was only blamed. Thinking that resistance was futile, I fell silent and my husband showed me a piece of paper. You're getting carried away just because you got your hands on some money. What's with the attitude? I'm the one supporting you. If you don't change your mind, it's divorce. The paper was a divorce form. I've already signed it. Take this and go back to your parents' house. If you apologize properly, I might not go through with the divorce. I received the divorce form with my husband's section completely filled out. As I stared at the divorce form, my memories came flooding back. I had never been supported in this house. I paid the same amount of living expenses as my husband, and all the housework was my responsibility. I had never been taken care of. Yet, the two of them always looked down on me. In the end, they even tried to take my father's money. If I stayed here, I might give in to the pressure from the two of them and hand over the inheritance. But this money was what my father had left for me. I thought it was rather an opportunity to be told to go back to my parents' house. Having the filled out divorce form in hand, I now had the power to make decisions for the future. I swore in my heart that I would never give up my father's inheritance and made a certain decision. That day after work, I went back to my parents' house. I'm home. Welcome back, sweetie. I had a feeling you'd be coming home soon, my mother said with a gentle smile as she warmly welcomed me, worn out from my experiences. The table was set with her home-cooked dishes. I couldn't remember the last time I had eaten a meal made by someone else. As I took a bite of the warm meal, I was moved to tears by how good it all tasted. Did you tell Mason about the inheritance? Yes, and that's when things got complicated. I told my mother everything that my husband and mother-in-law had said. She was stunned by the shocking content. The inheritance is yours, and it's up to you to decide how to live your life from now on. As tears streamed down my face, she gently put her arm around my shoulder. After staying at my mother's house for a week, I decided to return to my in-laws' home. Well, I'm going now. Take care. I was no longer afraid to return to that house. With a refreshed mindset, I headed back to my in-laws' home. Finally back, huh? Have you reflected on your actions? My husband and mother-in-law were waiting for me with their arms crossed. Yes, I'm sorry. Please let me live in this house again. I uttered an apology that was only skin deep. Hearing this, my mother-in-law smirked. Then hurry up and hand over the inheritance. Actually, the inheritance procedures are taking longer than expected. It's still not with me. It's a complicated process, so it'll probably take another half a year or more. It takes that long? Well, that's fine. They seemed satisfied, thinking that I would obediently hand over the inheritance. But they continued to nag me about staying at my mother's house for a week. The house is a mess because you didn't do your duties as a wife. Clean it up quickly. My in-laws' home was a mess after just a week, and it was unsanitary. It was actually impressive to make it so filthy in such a short amount of time. Yes, the old me would have been devastated to see the house in this state. But now, things were different. I didn't care about being bullied by my mother-in-law or being forced to do tough housework. I did the housework as ordered by her. 10 months later, it was my mother-in-law's birthday. Well, we're going now. Make sure to keep the house clean. She always went on a trip for her birthday, and of course, they never took me. By the way, have you received the inheritance yet? It's supposed to arrive today. Well, isn't that perfect? That $790K is a present from my mom. Make sure to transfer it to her account before we return. There was no way the inheritance would conveniently arrive on her birthday. My husband couldn't see through my lie. I didn't respond, but simply saw them off with a smile, saying, "Take care and have a safe trip." Once they were out of sight, I began to put my plan into action. I had been waiting for this day for a long time. They would surely be surprised when they returned from their trip, but it was no longer my concern. I quickly packed my belongings and left my in-laws' house. Wow, this is amazing! I was moving my belongings into my new home. In fact, I had built a house with my father's inheritance. I'm so happy I get to live in such a beautiful house. I had decided to invite my mother and live together. I am truly happy that I don't have to be bothered by them anymore. I sank into the soft sofa and felt content. Today is a celebration of our new home with my mother. We invited a chef to our home and spent a luxurious day. The next evening, I received a phone call from my husband. Hey, what's going on? He couldn't understand what was happening since all my things were gone when they returned home. I won't be coming back, so goodbye. I tried to hang up since I didn't want to talk to him anymore, but I could hear my mother-in-law raising her voice on the other side of the phone. What the hell do you think you're doing? Where are you now? I can't answer that. You told me to clean the house, so I put my things away. That's not funny. Besides, you haven't transferred the inheritance yet. How many times do I have to say that a daughter-in-law's money is mine? Huh? I'm single, you know. When I answered that way, my screaming mother-in-law suddenly fell silent. Single? Well, I'm actually divorced. I submitted the divorce papers Mason gave me. We're strangers now. Goodbye. I said that and hung up the phone. Imagining the dumbfounded mother-in-law on the other end, I could not stop laughing. My heart felt so light now that I had nothing to do with that family. After that, my ex-husband called me many times. When I had time, I would purposely answer the phone and let the abusive words from my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law flow. I recorded those calls from beginning to end. I decided to consult the police with those recordings. It's not uncommon for cases of harassment from an ex-husband. We'll issue a warning before it becomes dangerous. Fortunately, the police responded quickly and went to my former in-law's house to issue a warning. For my image-conscious former in-laws, having the police come was damaging enough. Plus, a subordinate of my ex-husband who lived nearby saw the police coming. Since my ex was a prominent figure in the company, the rumor spread quickly. Furthermore, his subordinates and colleagues who didn't like him started to exaggerate the story and spread bad rumors about him. Eventually, the rumor reached the department I belonged to. So I heard the police came? I'm divorced now, so I don't know much about it. What? You're divorced? Yeah, the bullying from my mother-in-law and my husband's abusive words were too much. I spoke in a slightly louder voice so that those around me could hear. The gossip-loving employees heard this and spread the rumor even further. It didn't take long for my ex-husband's boss to hear about it. You've got quite a lot of bad rumors going around. What are you talking about? I hate men who can't cherish their wives. And with such bad rumors going around, our reputation suffers too. So I decided to have you transferred. The transfer order given to my ex-husband was a harsh one. This place is... It was the branch office in the region with the worst performance. The area was called a landlocked island as there was no entertainment or anything of that sort around. You understand what being sent here means, right? Everything he had built up until now had crumbled, and there would be no chance of promotion in the future. He accepted the transfer order and moved to the countryside without being able to refuse. As for my ex-mother-in-law, she must have been shocked by her son's lowered reputation and the fact that they could no longer live together. She became a complete shut-in and eventually developed depression. It seemed she also had dementia as she frequently caused disturbances at home. My ex-father-in-law desperately took care of his deteriorated wife. Even if not related by blood, she is still an important family member. It was only natural that the ex-in-laws faced the consequences of their continuous harassment towards me. Now, my mother and I are living happily together. We even started gardening in our spacious yard. If I were still in that house, I would never have found such a wonderful hobby. Having a hobby has invigorated me. My body, which was once worn out due to stress, is now healthy. I'm very happy to have cut ties with my ex-in-law's family.